Good morning. Thanks for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. This is our Ignite User Conference. We've got a great crowd here today, and I really want to thank you for joining us at the, by Vegas time, the ungodly hour of 9 a.m. in the morning. I suggested we start at 3 in the afternoon, but that didn't go over too well. So thanks a lot for being with us here today. We're delighted to have you and to host you. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and to spend so much of it with us over the course of 2 days is a privilege for us, and we intend to use it very wisely. This is our user conference. Most of the content you'll see here is based on what our users and partners have told us is important to them. Our goal for the Ignite User Conference, as it was last year, is to talk about highly relevant and very hard security issues, things that are on your mind that you think are important, and what as an industry and together we can do about them. We've got a tremendously talented group of people here today. We've got close to 2,000 people as they wander in, but 2,000 people here, which is more than twice what we had last year. We had really great feedback last year with the format, which is really Palo Alto Networks enabling conversation and discussion about these issues amongst and between the users, and we'll try to replicate that this year. And as opposed to just talking at you. So we've got a great morning session for you today, and more importantly than that, breakout sessions this afternoon and tomorrow that I hope you'll find to be very valuable. And given the fact that we've got over close to 2,000 of the smartest network security professionals in the world here today, this does make this the largest gathering of network security professionals in the world. So we appreciate you taking the time. But given the fact that such a tremendously talented audience here, one of the things we want to talk about is the big picture in the security space, and I think this is a great audience to do that. So that's what we'll spend this morning doing. And what we wanted to do was to really dive into like what's changing from a cyber perspective. And the threats are top of mind, right, for us as an industry, top of mind for you as a customers. And I wanted to talk this morning a little bit about how things are going in this battle for cybersecurity, just a viewpoint on that, because I think it's harder and harder for all of us to get a sense of, how are we doing in that battle? And there's tons of concern today about the threat space, right? And we know that because it's changing super rapidly. All the threats are evolving faster, they're getting more complicated, and all the evolution is definitely not for the better, on that side of the page. They're more advanced, they're more complex, they're more targeted, they're more focused. They're all these things that we hear, and they're more threatening just due to the fact of who's behind them, and the hunt to figure that out about who's behind them, because they're super well organized, super well funded, and that evolution is going to continue into the future. And given that, I think there's an appropriate concern, certainly among us in the industry, and I think from a customer perspective as well, is who's winning and who's losing, or maybe even more so today about how do you even keep score in all this. And I think that's the case more and more today because the definition of success in the battle, I think, has been defined a lot by what can you detect of what happened from a bad thing perspective, and then how much of it and how fast can you actually go fix that? So a detect and fix mentality. And given that, if that's really the definition for success or the criteria for the success, I think it often feels like we're not winning because by definition, that feels retroactive and playing catch up. And that makes a lot of sense. I think it makes sense because of all the big picture shifts that have occurred and are going to continue to occur in the IT environment, like SaaS, for example. Like very few folks are using proprietary applications anymore. They're all using third-party applications. And so the advent of SaaS, for example, has created a situation where your apps have left your network. Then you've got the proliferation of mobile devices. And the result of that is in essence, your users have left the network. And then with the advent and push for cloud, your network has left the network, right? So the combination of these things has created a perfect storm. If you're the bad guy, it's sort of the perfect environment. And the reason for that is because one of the ways in, right into your networks is through applications. So the fact that there's an explosion of third-party applications traversing your network gives all the bad guys just more and more opportunities, more ways to get in. Then you've got all the proliferation of the mobile computing devices. So think of those as more points of entry, right? And then with things like the cloud, that's great. All I have to do is I've just got to get one access point, and I can get to 100 customers or 100 companies instead of having to do it one at a time. So all these things has created the perfect storm for the bad guys. And then on top of that, we say let's blur that line even further with the consumerization of IT. So we don't know what's personal, we don't know what's business anymore. So we can open up all of that environment as well to all the personal things that folks are doing, whether the laptops or the phones or what have you. So let's just mix that up as well, which makes it super complicated, but it's not hard enough yet, right? What we need to do is have the Internet of Things so we can have a bazillion more endpoints on the network coming soon, right, to somewhere near you, and we'll just make it even more complex with all the things that have to be protected and all the access points and all the things that can get onto the network as a result of that. And one answer to this, or an answer for a long time, about what do you do, right, in this situation, with this definition of success of being, detect and fixed, has been to throw more, and more technology at this in an attempt to keep up. And I don't think that's been terribly successful for folks over time, and proving even less successful as we look out into the future, because it creates increasingly high demands on the customer to react to all the alerts, all the inbounds, and figure out what to do with them and do it yourself, right? And a result of that is that you get increasingly high demands for very skilled, expensive teams to watch all that technology and go figure out what to do with it, which is the end game of having more technology, more operational burden and expense, and increasingly, I think, questionable efficiency of is it all working at the end of the day? And that doesn't sound too great. And like I said, we all think it's only going to get worse. So we think it's time to turn a page here and relook at this. And what I mean by that is, what is the definition of success, or what could it be, right? And should it be redefined about how we think about things? And the way we're thinking about that is that success should really be defined on prevention. Like, how much prevention can you actually do, right? As opposed to how much of the retroactive stuff can you actually do? Or to put it a different way, how much prevention can you do? How much can that be improved over time? So how much preventative measures can you put in place? How fast can those improve again and again and again, so that you can stop more and more stuff faster and faster instead of waiting for it to be there and then figure out what you're going to go do with it afterwards? And a good reason for this definition, we think, is that nobody's going to stop 100%, right, of the bad stuff. We just don't believe it. Anybody tells you that's not telling you the truth, right? So given that you're not going to stop 100% of all the attacks, I think you have to look at what's the art of the possible, right? And one way to think about this is, or we think about it, is that if legacy, traditional security technology may be able to take care of, say, 90% of the problems, and I'm making that number up just for using an example, it's the 10% that it can't take care of that's causing all the pain and the burden, right? And if you have a more advanced technology, and say the advanced technology can take care of 95%, again, I'm just making that up too, but if you take care of 95%, it's the 5% that's really causing the pain and burden on organizations. Okay? So if you can't stop 100%, because I don't think that's going to be a reality for quite some time, if ever, then what would that mean? Right? I think it means two things from an imperative standpoint. The first is you should really swap out the legacy technology, right? Because you got to get that bar higher. And the second thing is folks from an advanced technology perspective need to iterate very quickly so that 95% can become 95.2. 95.7, 96, 96.1, right? So that you can iterate that as fast as you possibly can to increase the level of preventative capabilities, and do that with the most advanced and sophisticated technology, that at the same time you're doing that, you're reducing the operational burden. And if you think about success that way, or if we as an industry thought about success that way, our goal would really be to raise the bar, but we're trying to raise the bar for the bad guys, right? for increasingly high needs for technology, talent, and resources, so that fewer and fewer of them can afford to actually mount a successful attack. And the resource requirements get so high that they're really starting to be forced to hide in the open as opposed to just hide. Because if we can force them to hide into the open, then a few things would happen. There'll be less of them who can actually mount successful attacks. And because the resource requirements can get so high for that, their ability to be invisible will decrease over time. And then, if they're nation states, for example, that's kind of where industry leaves off, right? And diplomatic efforts have to take charge. Or if it's organized crime, it's where industry is going to leave off, and international law enforcement efforts have to take over. Now, I've been in the business for a while, as you have too, and those two things need a hell of a lot of work, right, before they're actually going to be effective. So, but we as an industry, I think, need to keep pushing the bad guys more and more into the open, so there's less of them to deal with, so that in the hopes that things like these in time will actually occur, so we can just make it so much more difficult for attacks to be successful. So how would we get there? How do we raise the bar on this, but do that at an acceptable cost to folks like you who have to use this technology and only have so many resources to do it? The first thing is, we think if you accept the definition of success, saying the iterative process of prevention, or in order to be secure, take a preventative mindset approach to do that. And if you do that, then you're not going to be able to be secure, not going to be able to prevent these kinds of things unless a few things are true. The first is moving from an incident response mindset into what I'll call an intelligence mindset, which is a proactive sort of mindset. And then recognizing that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have intelligence if you don't have visibility, right? And by visibility here, we mean visibility for your entire network, which we think now includes the endpoints as well, but for your entire network, and keeping in mind that you have to have this visibility on your entire network to get the intelligence in light of all these changes we're talking about that are happening with the network, with SaaS and mobile and cloud and virtualization, all happening at the same time as well. So you have to do that. And when we talk about visibility, what we mean is visibility for all the applications on your network, all the content inside the applications on your network, all of the users on the network, all the devices on the network, and all of the time. Right? That's what true visibility would give you. And if you had that true visibility, then you could get intelligence from that. And from that, you can turn it into action, or turn your intelligence into actionability. And then if you had actionability or preventative capabilities as a result of that, ideally the last thing you'd do is you'd share it. Right? You'd share it with everybody, and hopefully they would share it with you, because none of us is going to win in the battle if we're trying to do it alone. And we believe that is the imperative, and we think that that's just not possible with legacy technology, simply because it was built for a different time, for more simple problems, for different reasons. For times when the idea of the applications on your network was a limited number of applications on the network, not whatever you're bringing in on your phone today. A time when most of the users had a single device that they interfaced with the network, and not 5 or 6 or whatever the average number that exists today. And then that user had a static identity whenever they were interfacing with your network, and not a time when they have dynamic identities that may change, like IP addresses, for example, hundreds of times in a day, and a time when the traditional definition of a network was sort of a perimeter concept where you could just go fence it off, as opposed to its very amorphous sort of content or context of what a network even looks like today. And because of that, we think it's deficient in nature, meaning it's not going to be able to move to the next level here, which is the idea of continuously improved prevention. And if you can't do that with legacy technology, we don't think that any consolidation of those things together is actually going to help. Actually, I think it makes it worse. It just makes it more expensive. It's less efficient and more expensive. So what do you have to do? And we think what you have to do is you have to have a true platform approach in order to get some leg up on this preventative concept that we're talking about here. And what we mean by that would be a platform that is highly integrated and highly automated. And what I mean by that, from a security functionality perspective, the native integration or highly integrated native integration of functionality that's required in order to take advantage of the kill chain to get in front of things in order to prevent bad things from occurring, and then that be highly automated as well, meaning that if it had all that functionality, that ideally so much of it would be automated that it would ease the operational burden of what you have to do in light of the attacks that are coming onto the network. And that would have the ability then to detect known threats and unknown threats, and ideally, do something about them before they damage the network. And if you had that, you could deliver on this promise, which in essence is superior security with ever-decreasing operational burdens. And this platform would safely enable all the applications on your network against known threats and unknown threats for all users, all the time, any device, physical or virtual, in any context. And that would be the promise of this platform, to get to superior security with superior total cost of ownership, or decreasing operational burden over time. And this is the Palo Alto Networks user conference, so this is the commercial aspect of this. And so we think we built that platform. You'll hear a lot about that this afternoon and tomorrow morning, and we're super interested on the feedback on this platform. So the basic idea here is something that you're pretty familiar with for some time with Palo Alto Networks, which is the idea of the next generation platform, inspecting all the traffic on your network. It's able to identify the known threats and block them. And for things that are unknown, it's sending it to our threat intelligence cloud in order for analysis and very fast turnaround for signatures to turn unknown threats into known threats, so that something can be done with them. The newest addition to the platform, which we announced last week, is the acquisition of a company called Cyvera, which is a next-generation endpoint security company. And what Cyvera's technology does is very, very clever. It turns out that all of the exploits and malware that have found their way onto endpoints in the last X number of years, pick whatever you want, there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, they all actually use only a couple dozen or a few dozen exploit techniques, right? So most of the industry has been very focused on detecting the bad stuff on the endpoint and going and fixing and remediating it. They've taken a very disruptive and clever approach, which is actually just focus on the underlying exploit technique itself. Because if you can identify the underlying exploit technique itself, which is not easy, by the way, but if you could do that, you could actually prevent it from landing on the endpoint. And that's what the Cyvera technology does. And we'll be rolling that out in a big way in the next couple months. And it's all tied together with the Threat Intelligence Cloud, which is basically taking information from the network and now from the endpoint, analyzing and correlating that information in order to push back very, very quickly down to the endpoint network, which can be tied together, the idea of what's known and what's unknown, and to be able to do something about the unknown stuff in very, very fast order. And with this platform, we think that increasingly better and better prevention is not only possible, but that the idea of prevention is going to become the byword for the industry in the future, because the old way of detection, fix, remediation just doesn't seem like that's really going to work. It just seems like it's more and more passive, it's more and more reactive, it's more and more expensive, and it's less and less effective. So we think this is going to be the way of the future in order to actually bring prevention to customers. Again, nobody's going to be able to get 100% of this stuff, but that should be the challenge back to us as an industry, to make this a reality as opposed to just the detect and fix. Now, if you had this, and we think we do, the result of that is better security, for ever increasingly better security for lower costs for the good guys, and less effective attacks and ever increasing cost for the bad guys. And we think that's the winning formula for the future in the battle for cybersecurity. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that this whole tectonic shift thing has created this perfect storm. And our vision is, and the reason that Palo Alto Networks was started was because we realized this, how important these things were. I shouldn't say we, Nir did, but he realized how important these things were and what it was going to mean for security, because these are very real, right? These are proven. They provide massive productivity gains for companies, organizations, enterprises, and they're not going away. But because of the security implications of those, and it creates the perfect storm for the bad guys, figuring out what to do in light of this so that you can be in front of the curve as opposed to behind the curve is absolutely critical. And our vision on that, again, is to provide as much prevention capabilities as you possibly can and improve that over time. And we're not alone in that vision. The big providers in each one of these IT categories, or the leaders, they understand exactly how important security is in order for their technology to be widely adopted and accepted by folks like you.